Hello, and welcome to Lyla's Lullabies, where we spend time exploring with Lyla, a traveler who wanders the world at her own pace, while sharing her most enriching and restorative moments with you. In tonight's story, we'll follow Lyla as she explores the vibrant capital, Mexico City. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let yourself go. We're so glad you're here. Whenever you're ready, let's begin. The morning light filtered through the curtains of Lyla's hotel room, and she woke to the distant sound of the city already in motion. Car horns, voices, the rhythmic call of a street vendor. She rose and opened the window, letting in the cool April air. Her hotel was just a few blocks from the Zócalo, the massive central square that had been the heart of Mexico City for centuries, and she could already feel the energy of the place. After dressing and having a quick breakfast of fresh fruit and pan dulce in the hotel's small dining room, Lyla stepped out onto the street. The morning was bright and clear, the air crisp with that high-altitude freshness. Mexico City sat at over 7,000 feet, and she could feel it in the quality of the light, the way the sky seemed impossibly blue. She walked toward the Zócalo, joining the flow of people heading to work, to school, to whatever their day held. The square opened up before her, enormous, one of the largest public squares in the world. The flagpole at its center flew an immense Mexican flag that snapped and billowed in the morning breeze. Around the edges of the square, historic buildings faced inward, colonial architecture painted in warm earth tones, their facades elegant and imposing. The Metropolitan Cathedral dominated the northern edge of the square. Lyla approached it slowly, taking in its Baroque facade, the twin bell towers rising against the blue sky, the intricate stone carvings that covered every surface. The cathedral had taken centuries to build, and you could see the layers of architectural styles: Baroque, Neoclassical, Churrigueresque, all woven together into something uniquely Mexican. She stepped inside, and the scale of the interior took her breath away. The ceiling soared overhead, supported by massive columns. Chapels lined the sides, each one ornate with gold leaf and religious paintings and sculptures. The main altar was a riot of golden decoration, catching the light that streamed through the high windows. The smell of incense hung in the air, and candles flickered in every corner. People were scattered throughout the cathedral, some praying, some simply sitting in quiet contemplation, some moving slowly from chapel to chapel. Lyla walked the perimeter, pausing to admire the details. The choir with its wooden stalls, the enormous pipe organ, the crypts where archbishops were buried. There was something humbling about being in a space that had stood for so long, that had witnessed so much history. She noticed the floor was uneven in places, sloping slightly, and remembered reading that the cathedral was slowly sinking into the soft lake bed beneath it, a reminder that Mexico City had been built on what was once a system of lakes, the ancient Aztec capital of Tenochtitlan rising from the water. Outside again, she crossed the square toward the National Palace, which stretched along the entire eastern side of the Zócalo. The building was massive, painted a deep red-orange color, with a long colonnade at ground level and the Mexican flag flying from its central balcony, the spot where the president gave the traditional cry of independence each September. She joined a security line to enter, showing her passport, and then made her way up the grand staircase to the second floor. And there they were, Diego Rivera's murals, covering the walls around the central courtyard, an epic visual history of Mexico from ancient times through the Revolution and beyond. Lyla stood transfixed. The murals were enormous, packed with detail, bursting with color and life and movement. Rivera had painted the entire sweep of Mexican history: the sophisticated Aztec civilization, the brutal conquest by Spain, the colonial period with its exploitation and resistance, the independence movement, the revolution. Every panel teemed with figures, each one carefully rendered, each one part of the larger story. She walked slowly along the corridor, following the narrative from wall to wall. Here were Aztec markets, abundant with goods. There was Cortés, meeting Moctezuma. Here were workers in mines and fields, their bodies bent under the weight of colonial oppression. There were revolutionary heroes, Hidalgo, Zapata, Villa, leading people toward freedom. A guide was speaking to a small group, and his passion, his pride in this visual history was evident. When he finished, a woman from the group approached Lyla. "Are you enjoying the murals?" she asked in English, noticing Lyla's focused attention. "They're extraordinary," Lyla said. "I've seen photographs, but being here, seeing them in person, the scale, the detail, it's overwhelming in the best way." Rivera wanted to give Mexico back its history, the woman said, to remind people of their indigenous roots, of everything that came before the conquest, and everything that came after. He believed art should be public, should belong to everyone, not just the wealthy. "It's a gift," Lyla said, "being able to see this." "Yes," the woman agreed, smiling. "Yes, it is." Lyla spent over an hour with the murals, returning to favorite sections, noticing new details each time she looked. Finally, knowing she had much more to see, she reluctantly left the National Palace and walked toward the Templo Mayor. The archaeological site sat just behind the cathedral, partially excavated, showing the remains of the great temple that had been at the center of Tenochtitlan. What remained was just a fraction of what had been. The Spanish had demolished most of the Aztec temples to build their colonial city. But even these ruins were impressive. Stone platforms rose in levels, leading to where the dual temples to Tlaloc and Huitzilopochtli had once stood. Serpent heads carved in stone lined the edges of the platforms. The original paint had long since faded, but Lyla could imagine how it must have looked. Brilliantly colored, imposing, the center of an empire. The museum adjacent to the ruins displayed artifacts found during the excavations, intricately carved stone sculptures, offerings that had been buried beneath the temple floors, everyday objects from Aztec life. Each piece told the story of a sophisticated civilization that had been destroyed but not entirely erased. Lyla emerged from the museum site and began walking along Avenida Madero, the pedestrian street that led west from the Zócalo toward the Alameda Central. The street was busy and vibrant, lined with shops and restaurants, street vendors selling everything from tacos to handmade crafts to pirated DVDs. Musicians performed on corners, their music competing with the general din of conversation and commerce. The buildings along Madero were beautiful, colonial and Art Nouveau and Art Deco, all mixed together, each one unique. She passed the House of Tiles, its facade covered entirely in blue and white Talavera tiles, now housing a Sanborn's restaurant. She passed churches and banks housed in historic buildings, their interiors as ornate as their exteriors. The street life was endlessly fascinating. Business people hurrying past, tourists stopping to take photos, families strolling together, street performers doing magic tricks or playing music. Mexico City had an energy that was palpable, a sense of movement and life that was both exhilarating and comforting. She reached the Alameda Central, a large park that had been the first public park in the Americas. Trees provided shade, fountains splashed, and people sat on benches or stretched out on the grass. Couples walked hand in hand, children chased pigeons, an older man played chess with himself at a stone table. Lyla found a bench in the shade and sat for a while, watching the life of the park unfold around her. As balloon vendor passed by Chicas, his entire cart covered with bright mylar balloons shaped like cartoon characters. A woman sold elote, corn on the cob covered with mayo, cheese, and chili powder, calling out her wares. The scent made Lyla's stomach growl, reminding her it was past lunchtime. She left the park and walked along until she found a taqueria, not a fancy place, just a small shop with a few stools along a counter and a woman making tortillas on a hot griddle. The smell of grilling meat and fresh masa was irresistible. Buenas tardes, Lyla said, settling onto one of the stools. Buenas tardes, señorita. ¿Qué va a ordenar? The woman asked, smiling warmly. 3 tacos de pastor, por favor, y una agua de Jamaica, Lyla replied. Perfecto, un momento. She watched as the woman assembled the tacos with practiced efficiency. Thin slices of pork carved from the vertical spit, placed on small corn tortillas, topped with cilantro and onion, and a squeeze of lime. The tacos arrived on a small metal plate, accompanied by a cup of deep red hibiscus water. Lyla took a bite and closed her eyes. The pork was perfectly seasoned, slightly crispy at the edges, the pineapple that had been roasting alongside it adding a hint of sweetness. The tortilla was fresh and warm, the cilantro bright and fresh. It was simple and perfect, the kind of food that couldn't be improved upon. At the stool next to her, an older gentleman was eating his own tacos with obvious enjoyment. He noticed her expression and chuckled. Good, yes? He said in English. Incredible, Lyla said. I've had tacos before, but never like this. Real tacos, he said with satisfaction. Not what they serve in other countries. This is Mexico City. We know our tacos. Do you come here often? Every week, maybe more. My wife, she makes good food at home, but sometimes. He gestured at his plate with a smile. Sometimes you need tacos. They chatted while they ate. He asked where she was from, what she thought of Mexico City, what else she planned to see. When she mentioned the Templo Mayor, his face lit up. You see how the cathedral is right there, built on top of the temple? That tells you everything about our history, one culture on top of another, mixing together. That's Mexico. We are both, the indigenous and the Spanish, and everything that came after, complicated but beautiful. After lunch, Lyla found a metro station and descended underground. The Mexico City Metro was efficient and crowded, and she joined the press of people boarding a train heading toward Chapultepec. The car was packed, but everyone made room, shifting politely to accommodate new passengers. A musician with a guitar entered and played for a few stops, his voice surprisingly clear over the noise of the train, and people dropped coins into his cup as he passed through the car. She emerged from the metro into Chapultepec Park, and the contrast was immediate, from the crowded subway to this expansive green space. The park was enormous, one of the largest city parks in the Western Hemisphere, and it was filled with families, couples, joggers, cyclists, vendors selling snacks and toys. Lyla began walking uphill, following signs toward Chapultepec Castle. The path wound through trees, past vendors selling ice cream and fresh fruit cups dusted with chili powder. The air smelled of pine and flowers and the distant scent of grilling meat from a food stand. The castle rose up on a rocky hill, its white walls and towers visible through the trees. As Lyla climbed closer, the views opened up. She could see across the park, across the city spreading out in every direction, the mountains visible in the distance through the haze. The castle itself was magnificent, a neoclassical palace that had served as the residence of Mexican emperors and presidents. Now it was a museum, and Lyla bought a ticket and began exploring. The rooms were lavishly decorated, frescoed ceilings, crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, paintings and artifacts from Mexican history. But it was the views from the castle's terraces that truly took her breath away. From here, she could see the entire expanse of Mexico City, one of the largest cities in the world, spreading out in every direction as far as the eye could see. The scale was staggering. Buildings and streets and neighborhoods stretching to the horizon, the whole thing cradled in a valley surrounded by mountains. She stood at the terrace railing for a long time, trying to comprehend the size of what she was looking at. This morning she had stood in the historic center, among colonial buildings and ancient ruins. But from here she could see that the Centro Histórico was just a tiny fraction of the whole. This vast metropolis of millions of people, all living their lives, all part of this incredible city. After touring the castle, she walked back down through the park to the National Museum of Anthropology. The museum building itself was striking. modernist architecture with a massive courtyard covered by a single huge umbrella-like column from which water cascaded. Inside, the museum was extraordinary. Room after room devoted to Mexico's pre-Columbian civilizations. Olmec, Maya, Aztec, Zapotec. Each culture represented with stunning artifacts. The famous Aztec sandstone dominated one gallery, its intricate circular calendar carved in massive stone. In another room, the reconstructed tomb of Pacal, the Mayan king from Palenque. Jade masks, feathered headdresses, obsidian mirrors, ceramic vessels, painted with scenes of gods and humans. Lyla moved through the galleries slowly, overwhelmed by the richness of these ancient cultures, the sophistication of their art, their mathematics, their astronomy, their architecture, all of it on display here, a testament to what had flourished in this land long before European contact. A young couple stood in front of a massive Olmec head, carved from basalt, its features broad and serene. "It's amazing that they moved these," the young man said in English. "Some of them weigh tons, and they transported them for miles." "Ancient engineers," his companion replied. "They knew what they were doing." Lyla found herself nodding in agreement, though she hadn't been part of the conversation. The ingenuity and determination required to create these civilizations, to build their cities and monuments, to develop their complex societies. It commanded respect, and AWE. She could have spent days in the museum, but hours had passed already, and the afternoon was sliding toward evening. She reluctantly left, stepping back outside into the late afternoon light. She caught a taxi near the park entrance, giving the driver the address of a restaurant in the Condesa neighborhood. As they drove, the character of the city changed. The grandeur of the Centro Histórico and Chapultepec gave way to tree-lined residential streets, Art Deco and Art Nouveau buildings, sidewalk cafes, and boutique shops. Roma and Condesa had a European feel, with their circular parks and diagonal streets, their beautiful buildings painted in soft colors, their bohemian atmosphere. The taxi dropped her on a street lined with restaurants, their outdoor seating already filling with the early dinner crowd. Lyla walked for a while, taking in the neighborhood. Young professionals gathered at cafe tables, their laptops open, having meetings over coffee. Artists sold paintings in a small plaza. A bookstore had tables of used books spilling onto the sidewalk. Everything felt creative and alive, a different kind of energy from the historic center. She chose a restaurant with outdoor seating, drawn by the menu posted outside and the warm lighting. The waiter who greeted her was young and friendly, his English excellent. "Welcome, table for one?" "Yes, please." He led her to a table with a good view of the street, brought her water and a menu, and gave her time to look over the options. The menu was modern Mexican, traditional dishes reimagined with contemporary techniques. Local ingredients featured prominently. She ordered chile en nogada, a classic dish from Puebla. Poblano peppers stuffed with picadillo and covered in a creamy walnut sauce, topped with pomegranate seeds. When it arrived, it was as beautiful as it was delicious. The colors of the Mexican flag, green pepper, white sauce, red pomegranate, arranged artfully on the plate. As she ate, she watched the street life unfold. A couple walked past with their dog, stopping to let it sniff at a tree. A group of friends arrived at the restaurant next door, greeting each other with hugs and laughter. A delivery cyclist wove through the traffic, his bike loaded with bags of food. The sun was setting now, the light turning golden, the shadows growing long. The waiter returned to check on her, and they chatted briefly about the neighborhood, about her day, about the best places to walk after dinner. "You should see Parque México if you haven't yet," he suggested. "It's beautiful at this time of evening, very peaceful. And if you want to see the sunset, there's a rooftop bar a few blocks from here. Baltra it's called. Great views." After dinner, Lyla followed his advice, walking to Parque México. The park was circular, designed in Art Deco style, with a fountain at its center and paths radiating outward. Tall trees created a canopy overhead, and the evening light filtered through the leaves in soft green-gold rays. People were out enjoying the evening, walking dogs, jogging, sitting on benches reading or talking. Children played on the playground while parents watched. A group was doing Tai Chi clearing, their movements slow and synchronized. The atmosphere was relaxed and neighborly, a sense of community that felt genuine and welcoming. Lyla walked the perimeter of the park slowly, in no hurry, enjoying the cool evening air and the peaceful atmosphere. She thought about the day, the grandeur of the cathedral, the power of Rivera's murals, the ancient stones of the Templo Mayor, the delicious simplicity of street tacos, the castle with its sweeping views, the treasures in the anthropology museum, and now this lovely neighborhood with its European charm and Mexican warmth. As the sky began to shift toward dusk, she made her way to the rooftop bar the waiter had mentioned. The entrance was discreet, a doorway on a quiet street, and she climbed several flights of stairs before emerging onto the rooftop. The view took her breath away. The city spread out in every direction, lights beginning to twinkle on Zangit Ketenawe Welo de Naif, as evening arrived. The mountains in the distance were silhouettes against the darkening sky. The rooftop bar itself was stylish but not pretentious. Comfortable seating, soft music, strings of lights creating a warm glow. She found a spot at the edge of the rooftop, ordered a mezcal cocktail from the attentive bartender, and settled in to watch the sunset. The sky was painting itself in shades of orange and pink, the clouds catching fire with reflected light. The city below was transitioning from day to night, office buildings going dark, street lights coming on, the endless movement of cars and people continuing their evening routines. Other patrons were scattered across the rooftop, couples having quiet conversations, a group of friends celebrating something with laughter and toasts, solo visitors like herself, drawn by the view and the atmosphere. Her cocktail arrived, beautifully presented with a smoking cinnamon stick, and a twist of orange peel. The mezcal was smooth and complex, smoky and slightly sweet, with hints of citrus and spice. She sipped it slowly, savoring the flavors, feeling the warmth spread through her. The sun touched the horizon, and the colors in the sky intensified. From here she could see landmarks she'd visited earlier, the cathedral towers in the Centro Histórico, the trees of Chapultepec Park, the endless sprawl of neighborhoods extending in every direction. It was almost impossible to believe she'd walked through just a tiny fraction of this enormous city. A woman at a nearby table was also alone, also watching the sunset, and their eyes met for a moment. The woman raised her glass slightly, and Lyla returned the gesture, a silent acknowledgement of shared appreciation for the beauty of the moment. The sky continued its transformation, from orange to rose to deep purple. Stars began to appear, competing with the light pollution of the city below. The temperature was dropping now, comfortable and pleasant, and Lyla was glad for the light sweater she'd brought. She thought about the man at the taco stand, talking about Mexico being complicated but beautiful, both indigenous and Spanish, and everything that came after. That felt true. The city was a palimpsest, layers upon layers. Aztec temples beneath colonial churches, Diego Rivera painting revolutionary history on palace walls, ancient artifacts preserved in modern museums, traditional street food served alongside contemporary cuisine, historic neighborhoods transformed into creative hubs. And somehow it all worked together, all made sense as a whole. The complexity wasn't confusing, it was enriching. Every layer added depth, added meaning, added to the sense that this place was alive with history and culture and possibility. The evening deepened, and the city lights grew brighter. From the rooftop, Mexico City looked like a galaxy. Millions of lights stretching to every horizon, each one representing lives being lived, stories unfolding, the daily dramas and joys and struggles of 20 million people. The music from the bar's speakers was soft and atmospheric, something with a gentle beat and melodic horns. People's conversations created a pleasant murmur, punctuated occasionally by laughter. The air smelled of the cocktails being mixed at the bar, of the cigarettes someone was smoking in the designated area, of the city itself, that particular urban scent of concrete and exhaust and food and life. Lyla finished her cocktail and ordered another, a different one this time, wanting to prolong the evening, to hold on to this feeling of contentment and wonder. The bartender recommended something with soitol and grapefruit, and when it arrived, it was crisp and refreshing, perfect for sipping while watching the city lights. She thought about tomorrow. There was so much more she wanted to see. Coyoacán, with its cobblestone streets, and Frida Kahlo's house, the floating gardens of Xochimilco, the Zócalo at night when it was lit up and lively, the countless museums and markets and neighborhoods she hadn't even touched yet. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, she was here, on this rooftop in Roma, watching the city she'd been exploring all day transform into its nighttime self. The same city, but different. The harsh daylight softened into something more mysterious, more romantic, the rough edges smoothed by distance and darkness. The rooftop bar was filling up now, the evening crowd arriving. A DJ had started playing, the music still soft, but with more energy now, and some people were beginning to dance near the bar. The atmosphere was festive but not loud, sophisticated without being stuffy, exactly the kind of place where Lyla felt comfortable spending her evening. She struck up a conversation with the bartender during a quiet moment, asking him about the neighborhood, about his recommendations for breakfast tomorrow, about what he loved about living in Mexico City. "It's infinite," he said, gesturing broadly. "You could live here your whole life and still not know it all, not see everything. That's what I love. It never gets boring. There's always something new to discover, always another neighborhood to explore, always another story to learn." "I can feel that," Lyla said. "Even just one day, I feel like I've barely scratched the surface." "Exactly. But that's okay. You don't have to see everything. You just have to be open to what you do see, you know? To really experience it, not just check it off a list." Lyla nodded, appreciating his perspective. That was exactly how she'd tried to approach the day. Not rushing from site to site, but taking her time, allowing herself to be present, to absorb not just what she was seeing but how it felt, what it meant. The night settled in fully now, the stars invisible against the city's glow, but the sky a deep, velvety black. The temperature was perfect, the cocktails were excellent, the music was just right. Lyla felt a deep sense of happiness, of being exactly where she was supposed to be. She watched the city, the constant movement of lights below, cars and buses flowing through streets like blood through veins. She watched the people around her on the rooftop, their faces animated in conversation, their laughter genuine, their joy in the evening palpable. She felt connected to all of it, part of this moment, this place, this endless, fascinating city. The rooftop bar would stay open late, she knew. People would dance and drink, and celebrate into the early hours. But Lyla was content with her perch at the edge, her view of the city, her quiet contentment. She didn't need the party, she had something better, a sense of wonder, of gratitude, of having experienced something authentic and meaningful. She sipped her cocktail slowly, watching the play of lights across the valley, thinking about Aztec emperors and Spanish conquistadors, about revolution and murals, about tacos and temples, about a city that had been destroyed and rebuilt, that had grown beyond all reasonable bounds, that contained within itself centuries of history and millions of lives, all happening simultaneously. The night stretched out before her, warm and welcoming, full of possibility. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new discoveries. But for now, she was here, on this rooftop in Mexico City, held by the evening air and the city lights, and the gentle buzz of voices around her, feeling deeply wonderfully alive.